Hello and welcome to the first video of creating a matrix style animational plugin. Before we start, let's look at what we'll be building in this project. Okay, so if we go to the WordPress, we're just going to be making this animational widget here. It's going to be a matrix style. This combines JavaScript, CSS and PHP. If we go to the back end and log in, we can see what the settings are. So if we go to the appearance and the widget, we are able to change the title to whatever we want, and so it's a little bit more dynamic. So this is what we're going to be making in this project. Okay, so the first, or our main aim to create this project is we're going to be creating the WordPress OOP plugin, or we're going to create the plugin using object-oriented programming. The 5 tasks that we're going to be doing in this video is creating the plugin basic data, creating our matrix plugin class, adding our constructor, creating an action to hook our script method to WordPress, and then adding the JavaScript and CSS files to our WordPress structure. So this is going to be quite quick. The way I'm going to do it. If you are struggling on, for example, how to set up the file structure for WordPress, I would suggest going in and looking at the video that I made about creating the file structure. You can find this in my in the descriptions below. If you're worried about what an action is and what a hook is, I would suggest looking again at the video about action, filters and hooks, and that description will be below. But if all this looks fairly friendly to you, then let's proceed. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create the plugin basic data. So you need to go to where your WordPress is located in your local host. If you don't know how to do this, or you haven't installed WordPress in your local computer, then I would suggest looking at that first video where I show you step by step how to do that. The link is in the description below. If you have, then we need to go to the content folder, go into the plugins because we're going to be making a plugin, and then add a new folder. And we're going to call it the matrix. Okay, then what we need to do is we're going to open up, I use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to open up the folder. So I have located it here in plugins and then in matrix. So I'm opening up this folder there. Okay, so we've opened up the folder and now we can add in our file structure. Okay, so what we're going to be doing in this folder is let's add some folders first. So our first folder is going to be CSS. So we're going to be adding our CSS into our matrix, or adding a CSS folder into our matrix folder. Then we're going to be adding JavaScript. So I'm just going to put that a JavaScript folder. So this is where all our JavaScript files are going to be in. I'm then going to add an includes. So this is going to be where our PHP file for our widget's going to be. And then I'm going to add the new file, and I'm going to be making it the matrix PHP file. And it should have the same name as the folder. So the folder and the file should have the same name. So we've done the first thing where we've created our file structure. Okay, so now the next thing that we want to do is we want to create the basic data, this basic information for our plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to another plugin that has been created. So we're going to go to the first one that was created automatically, and if we look for the same PHP name as the file, this is going to be our main PHP file for the plugin. So if we open this one, and let's open it in Visual Studio Code, we can see that this is going to be our basic data, and then this is a security statement here that basically saying that if you don't access it the right way, then it's going to exit it. So if you want more information about how this works, I would suggest going into that video that I mentioned earlier and watching it, because it talks about how to add security and why the security, why this kind of statements add further security to your files. So we're just going to take this and then we're going to add this to our first file. Then all we need to do is go and change this to our settings. So I'm going to stop the video and change it now. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just changed the information to ours. So I've just labeled this matrix title. So this whole package is going to be under matrix title. The plugin name here is the same as matrix title. I don't have a website, so I've just left that blank. I've added a description of what the plugin will do. I've said this is version 1.1, but you can add any number. And I've put my name as an author, and then I've given it a license so people can redistribute it however they want. Once you save it and you go back, again, you'll start seeing this information in your plugin. So again, you'll have the title, the description, the version, and the author's name. So that information will be here. So what we've done is we've just now completed our first task. And before we move on to the second task, a couple of things I want to just make sure that you are doing, that the title and the main file, the main PHP, matches up. And I want you to make sure that you add the additional security feature that's contained in other plugins. So let's have a quick look at that. So if we go back to the sample plugin that's in all the WordPress, folders, if we look at this index, I want you to cut that index or copy it and then insert that into your in your file. So if we open it now, it just contains this simple bit of code, and it just means that it adds a little bit more security because you can't directly access this. It stops direct access, so you have to access it through the proper WordPress means. Again, if you're confused a little about this, then I would suggest looking at that video about how to create the file structure. So now our second task is to create the matrix plugin. Okay, so to make the plugin, what we need to do is we just need to, below the code that we've already created, all we need to do is add a class. So this is telling the PHP that we're going to be making a object-oriented, we're going to be using object-oriented programming to make a class here. So we've started the first one by creating the base of our matrix plugin class. Now we need to make the constructor. So the constructor is the function that's automatically called when the class is initiated. So what happens is we make an object from this class, and then when we make that object, this constructor automatically gets called. So that means that we want to create our actions into this class. So if you don't know what a constructor is, I would suggest looking at one of my object-oriented programming videos to understand how, or the basic concept of OOP, and then coming back to watch this video. If you are, let's continue. So because this is automatically called, we want to add an action that hooks our script method to our WordPress. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add this action here, and this is a WordPress function, and it's saying that we want to attach this this method that we haven't created yet, but we will, this method, and we're going to hook it to this WordPress hook. Now again, if you don't know what actions are and you don't know what hooks are, I would recommend you watching that video about actions, filters and hooks, because it will explain a lot. So what we've done now is we've now created an action that hooks our scripts to WordPress. So what we would like to do now is we're going to create this method now within our class to make sure that we add our CSS and JavaScript. So let's do that. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to now create a new method that adds our scripts. So if we go below the constructor, so we're not going to be using the constructor here, but we're going to still maintain it inside the class. We're going to be creating a new method. Now do remember, a method is just like a function, but it's within a class. So what we're doing here is we're using this array, this add scripts, to say we're going to be attaching this code onto our hook. Now do remember, it has to be array because this argument only accepts one value, and we want two values. We want to say this, and for this is just referring to itself. So what actually is it saying is it's saying, instead of this, it's saying go to the matrix add script function. However, we don't want to put that. That's not how OOP works. We use this this value. So what we're saying is go to the matrix add script function, which is just below, and then we're going to use this we're going to use these two WordPress functions here. This one is to add the CSS, so we need to add this, use this WordPress function, and this is going to be the name that WordPress registers this file under, and then this is going to be the pathway. So because it's our plugin, we're saying use the plugin URL, and that will direct us to the plugin folder, and then just add in from the plugin folder where your path is. So I've put matrix, CSS and style CC, which we'll have to create because at the moment there's nothing in there. The same here, if you want to add JavaScript, which we do, we want to use this. So instead of style, we need the script. And again, this is the name that we're going to put this under WordPress, and then we're going to say plugin URL to direct it to that plugin folder, and then we're going to say matrix.js and main.js file. Again, we haven't got that yet, so we do need to add that. So I think we've created the hook, but we haven't created the file, so that's not finished quite yet. Okay, so to create the file, I'm just gonna copy that, so make sure that it matches up, and I want to add a new file, and I've now added a new style CSS in my CSS folder. Let's go back, and then in my JavaScript folder, new file, I'm going to add the main JavaScript in there. Okay, so there's nothing in there yet, but what we've done now is we've added the main file structure for our OOP. We've created our class. We've added our constructor that has an action, and this action adds our script. One script is a CSS script. The second script is a JavaScript script. So the CSS is in the CSS folder, the JavaScript is in the JavaScript folder, and I think I can tick off my 5th task. Okay, before we stop, I just want to have a quick look at the structure of the plugin. So at the moment we're creating our plugin object. What this does is we're going to use a constructor to add our actions and filters. We're going to create 2 methods, one which we've already done, and this adds the CSS and JavaScript files. The second method adds the register widget. Now what will happen is within the first file, the method, we can then create CSS files and JavaScript files, and then the second method registers our second widget. So the widget object is something that we'll have to create in another file, and this will be another class. And then this class will have our instances, the two titles that we saw, and it's going to have three methods. One that kind of shows what's on the front end, one that shows the settings from the back end, and the third method that updates the data from the back end to the front end. And so what we'll have is the plugin will register the widget, and then that method will make sure that the widget object can get information from our CSS and JavaScript files. Okay, before you go, I want you to see if you can answer these concept checking questions. So if you can answer them, then you have a good understanding of the things that are covered. If not, then I would suggest that you look at some of the methods, or look at some of the videos that I've done about actions and hooks, or rewatch the information if you don't understand how to attach a CSS file. So hopefully you've stopped the video and you've answered these questions. Let's look at the answer. So the key word that we need to add a method to a hook, we need to make sure that we put it in an array in OOP. So remember, for that add action WordPress function, you have the first value is the hook, which is where you attach your code to in the WordPress process. And the second one is a single value that you need. However, we can't do that because we're working with OOP. We need to tell them what's our class and what is the name of our method within that class. So we put it in an array, and this talks about what the class name is. This talks about what method you're calling within that class. Describe what the code below will do. This will attach the method, this add script method, which is in the object, to the hook. So remember, this is in the class, it's in the object, and I'll attach it to this hook that we called. Next one, what WordPress function do you use to attach a CSS file to your plugin? Well, we use this style and WordPress function, not the script one, the style one. And then the first value is the name that we assign it in WordPress, and the second one is the pathway of the CSS file. So that is all the information for the first video. Hopefully you've been able to keep up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the code that we've created in this video onto my GitHub, and then if you would like, you can download this code and take a look at what we've made today.